I'm Scott Tibbles with the Investing News Network. I'm here today at the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference. Joining me now is Remi Piet, Senior Director of America's Market Intelligence. Thanks for joining me, Remi.
My pleasure.
So, it is now January 2019. We now have a new Brazilian president who's now been sworn in, Jair Bolsonaro. Can you tell me a little bit about how the mining industry is looking in Brazil with a new president?
Well, Brazil has always been an historical mining country. So there's been a series of provinces in the state, Minas Gerais especially, which have a long history of mining. Yet you had other upcoming jurisdictions in the state in the north of Brazil, whether the state of Pará, Goiás next to Minas Gerais, other jurisdictions where corruption was and red tape was very important and limiting the development of mining investments. And the hope is with the new Bolsonaro administration, you're going to have a mainstreaming of processes, the capacity to move forward on some of the projects, his position towards protecting the environment and protecting the indigenous communities without taking a position on this is usually pro-mining here, and therefore some of the projects are likely to move forward faster than it was the case in the past. So, however, you still need to get a clear understanding of the local realities. There are, on top of federal issues such as, let's say, a reform of the pension plan, which will be important for the Brazilian economy, the key importance is to understand who you're working with locally. I mean, series of projects are being hampered right now with, garimpeiros, which are, communities and cooperatives of informal miners or landowners that will hamper the project. So the idea of being successful in Brazil, as in any country in Latin America, is to understand and have clear intelligence gathering at the local level, good community management, because whatever happens in Brasilia doesn't change the fact that the most important barriers in Brazil will come from the local level and corruptive practices of some of those actors.
Okay, and so what are some examples of how Bolsonaro has so far proven himself to be pro-mining?
Well, he has cut down on a large scale of a series of public spendings, and then a lot of different employees that were responsible for red tapes have been cut down. So the issue here is that you will have also a clear signal for investors that over the course of the administration, these policies are going to be pro-business and pro-private interest. Guedes, which is the Minister of the Economy, is a very solid choice. He's coming from the Chicago School of Thought, so liberalization of the economy. All this is a very strong difference with past administration under Dilma or under Lula, which Lula was also, despite his political affiliation, has been some level, pro-business. But under Dilma Rousseff, it has become much harder to see project move forward. We've seen a series of key barriers from also the administrative sectors and difficulties to get licensing and permitting on time, which actually caused some of the miners to take judicial actions against the government. This should be something that should evolve positively in the future, and we're seeing strong incentives for local administrations to be more proactive on some of those projects.
So do you think that we're going to see a rush of mining investment into Brazil this year?
Well, we had definitely a decrease in mining investment over the last few years, which is going to be reduced, and therefore, as a result, obviously will lead to an increase in investment next year. Whether this is going to be taking a long-term, a constant evolution will also depend also on the capacity to carry forward with serious reforms. I mentioned the pension reform. That's the most important one in Brazil. I mean, the pension plan in Brazil is probably very advantageous to workers, and the country cannot support it financially. And making key changes might actually lead to a series of demonstrations in the streets and insecurity. But we're very confident indeed into the capacity of the government to move forward in terms of those needed reform. And as a result of welcoming investment in natural resource sector, which has been key to the platform of Bolsonaro, saying that he would actually strengthen his position and his support to private investment in the mining sector. Yes.
So Bolsonaro has been called the Trump of the tropics. Do you think that could help or hinder mining in Brazil?
Well, when it comes to mining, it's much more linked to economic policies and to the politics of Brasilia and his foreign policy stance. In terms of the economics of Brazil, Bolsonaro is not the one dictating those policies. I mean, he very much relies on his economic minister, Guedes, and all those policies are very, very liberal and pro-mining. So I assume that over the next coming months and years, we're going to see a series of reduction of red tape, a series of potential pro-mining support investment in different regions. But as I said again, the important part is to understand the logic of the political game at the governor level and at the local mayor level. Whether or not you have support from Brasilia does not limit you to and ensure that you will be successful if you don't know how to handle key risks, whether at the social level, local politics level, local economics, operational level, which are the local level. The image also of mining in Brazil has not been very positive over the last few years with the São Marco Dam collapse, or a series of issues that have also been impacting of key international investors in recent history. So there's clear need for mining companies to be very wary of reputational risks, very wary of social and political risks to move forward in terms of their operation, especially if you're trying to operate in the Amazonian regions or Northeast region. If you're looking at other states, Minas Gerais, Rio Grande do Sul, other more pro-mining states, then those risks are limited if you bear in mind that you have to keep obviously sound environmental and social policies around your operations.
Okay, so Brazil was obviously an election that happened last year. In 2019, there's going to be three major elections in South America. We've got Argentina, Bolivia, and Uruguay. They're all happening in October. Let's just talk about Argentina. What should we be looking at?
Argentina is very interesting because you're looking at a country that's coming out of very, very strong economic downturn and the need for Macri to pull resources, $57 billion help lifeline from the IMF. And that was very critical because the IMF reputation since 2001 has been so negative in Argentina that observers at the time were saying that's probably the death sentence for Macri to have to call on the IMF to sustain the economy. Now, if you actually look at the fact, it's been fairly successful, and the Argentinian economy is stabilizing. He had, from the very start of his administration, tried to implement a gradual series of reform to move away from a very centralized, corrupt Kirchner administration. This has gathered a series of support, and despite the economic downturn and the lack of dollar currency, basically that just weighed on the peso, now he's starting to see the positive result of him being level-headed and working hand in hand with the IMF. Right now, when you're looking at potential polls for the October elections, you're seeing actually Macri leading the polls still with a 30% rate of votes, ahead of his likely opponent Cristina Kirchner, but also other candidates. So his chances of re-elections are actually higher than most thought last year, which would be a very strong signal for mining investment in the coming years in Argentina.
Fantastic. And so looking over to another big mining jurisdiction, Bolivia.
Yes.
So President Evo Morales is running again. What should we make of this election?
Well, he's running again, and it hasn't been a very easy path for him to run again because he actually went for a referendum to change the constitution for him to be able to run. Referendum that he actually lost. Then he actually had to go back to the Constitutional Court to get another support from now the additional area of government, and therefore that allowed him to run. But I mean, this has left some critical, vision and negative there's a reputation on his attempt to be re-elected. He also has very, very strong opponents, and 3 former presidents will be running against him. Carlos Mesa being probably the most clear opponents and probably today the favorite to these upcoming elections. Even right now, Morales, if you were to try to build on indigenous support against what you would call probably pro-American governments from before his administration, he's not able to gather all the indigenous votes because Jaime Paz, for example, another indigenous leader from the MIR, will be running. So there's not going to be consensus on indigenous issues behind Evo Morales. So his chances for re-election is going to be complicated. There's a series of corruption scandals in the past that are starting to resurface, and right now we're looking at Bolivia as potentially a very interesting jurisdiction for future mining investment in the next 2 to 5 years if indeed Morales has to step down and be replaced by Carlos Mesa. Today that's the likely scenario, because we'll see in a country which has very strong mining potentials, a change of different reforms, and much less political risk than we had in the past.
So has Evo Morales been good for mining or bad for mining?
Well, good or bad, I mean, there's obviously there were a series of regulations that were probably hampering investment from the mining sector. The problem that you have in Bolivia also is the fact that a series of mining investments from the past in different operations have been extremely, oblivious to a basic community management and security policies on the ground. So the image of mining, when you actually go and visit mines in Potosi, for example, the level of mining operations are not modern to the level of standards of mining in Chile or in Peru today. So if what you're seeing is obviously a lack of modernization of the mining sector, the cutting down on foreign investment, there's almost no foreign companies really looking seriously at Bolivia today, has obviously not led to the modernization of the mining sectors in Bolivia. That could be something of the past with a renewed administration, and you could see strong international investors looking much more keenly at Bolivia. Investment in terms of exploration have also been fairly down in Bolivia compared to the potential that it has, whether you're talking about lithium, copper, gold also. There's real interesting, that's a very interesting jurisdiction in terms of geology, and if you have a more friendly administration in La Paz that would actually support and provide more security for investors, you could be seeing today, in the coming years, Bolivia as a very, country leading the pack towards new sustained investment, such as we've seen over the last years in Ecuador, for example, with a move away from Correa towards Moreno, a much more mining-friendly administration. So that could be, if I were today a large company investor, I'd be looking at the scenarios after the elections in Bolivia, because some very interesting assets might be seized.
What are some of the commodities that Bolivia has in spades? Is it similar to Chile with copper?
It is, and copper, lithium also is very strong. Again, because investment in exploration has been so low over the last few years, there's probably a very interesting also resources in gold and silver that could actually be found. I mean, the series of geological construction and when you actually look at the salar, which is bordering the region of Atacama in Chile, for example, it's very likely the same resources can be found there. The issue here would be to now being able to harvest those resources with modern technology, but also being very careful that it's always about understanding the local realities. I can't stress that enough. Being able to see what kind of political game will be at play in those different jurisdictions and the regions of Potosi, for example, of the Andes part of Bolivia. So you want to know much more the local realities. Bring in third parties if you need to, but understand who are the main social, economic, and political actors to make your investment worthwhile in the long run in Bolivia. But that's true for Bolivia. That's actually true for every single jurisdiction in Latin America. All those countries are, almost exclusively all of them actually have signed the ILO 169 conventions on indigenous rights. So you want to be very cautious of understanding how to move forward with community management, key de consulta previa, so first consultation with local communities ahead of any investment. And if you do so responsibly, we've seen some very, very successful mining investments in different jurisdictions in Latin America, and there's no reason why Bolivia under a new administration would not be some of those seeing the same success that you're seeing right now in Ecuador and you've seen in Peru and Chile in the past.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for your wonderful insights on Latin American politics, Remi.
My pleasure.
We'll wrap it up there. My name's Scott Tibbles with the Investing News Network, and I've been speaking with Remi Piet.